Welcome to another edition of the John Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. John Schmelk coming to you from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Very excited to be joined by longtime NFL coach, NFL head coach, offensive coordinator, coached all over the offensive side of the ball, all now host on Sirius XM NFL Radio, Todd Haley. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing great, John. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. So the Giants in week number 4 decided to take Russell Wilson out of the starting lineup, slide in Jaxson Dart, their first round pick from this year in week number 4. You've been part of some of these decisions in the past. What do you think the conversations are like, and what goes into the decision to decide to go with a rookie this early in the season?
Well, there's a lot of variables. Obviously, the plan, from a plan standpoint, very similar to when I was in Cleveland and we had Tyrod Taylor, we drafted Baker Mayfield. Our on paper plan was, go as long as we can, get through as much of the year as we can without having to play the young guy. But in that case, it was an injury. So a little different, and Baker had to come in and, Tyrod could have come back, but the decision was made that, Baker did some good things. We wanted to see what he could do. Again, these are all kind of things that staffs vote and talk a lot about. From that standpoint, I felt like for the Giants, the longer, if they could scrape out some wins through a really brutal schedule, that they could hold off the wave of outside noise, which started pretty quickly in New York because, when you're not able to win a game in those first 3, it's really tough. So there's a lot of pressure coming from a lot of different directions. So, from that standpoint, I was rooting for some wins. So, Jaxson could continue to develop because there is developing that has to go on with all these young guys. But that's not the way it worked out.
So, Coach, once you get into the regular season, because, Jaxson played in the preseason, we saw him in a bunch of, training camp practices in the spring, OTAs, all that sort of stuff. But once you get into the regular season, he's not getting nearly as many reps as he would be in the summer and the spring. But you see him, he's been running the scout team. You have him in meetings. So what does that developmental process look like to know when or if he is ready once you get into the regular season and the number of reps he has on the field is a little bit more limited?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's so few reps anyway that, whoever you're planning on starting, it's important they're getting most of those reps. So, you sprinkle them in here and there, but yeah, the bulk of the work's coming on the show team, giving a look, and that's great development in itself. We heard, I heard multiple people talking about how, he was playing the role of Patrick Mahomes all last week. That's great development. So then you're taking them after practice a little before. I think Coach Dayball did a great job with even inserting him in for a play or two. In that last game, I might have liked to have seen him get a series at the end, just the way the second to the last possession went when you were still in the game. But that's not for me to judge. But I think Brian did a great job of putting them in different spots. Even if it was a play or 2 plays, that's all good. You're actually getting your feet wet a little bit. But I closely tie this situation to a situation I was in when I was coaching in Dallas, with Bill Parcells. We had Drew Bledsoe, an older, aging, if you will, veteran that, not that he was ever a mobile guy like Russell was, but limited to no mobility. Our line wasn't very good. We had Tony Romo, who was a second-year guy, but still, a undrafted free agent guy that nobody knew a lot about. But we saw him every day, and I think, when I think about him, Jaxson playing the Patrick Mahomes role, we were going to play Green Bay at some point, and everybody's watching Romo. Brett Favre was his idol. So he's out there just slinging it. I mean, he did a great Brett Favre impersonation. So you see those things. So anyway, Tony was much more mobile. Our line was not very good. And it was sack after sack, and we sat down as a staff and talked about it. And I think it was a little later in the season, but not much. But we just felt that Tony increased our margin of error. And I hear people all over say you can't put a young guy in without a line that can protect him. Well, if that young guy is really mobile, you can get away with it, and he can actually make the line better. So, and it worked out for us. We made it into the playoffs with Tony. Unfortunately, he decided to fumble a snap on a field goal, but that's neither here nor there. But so I see it very close to that situation. An older guy, love Russell Wilson, but the line's not very, very good, and it's going to lead to negative plays in some situations where you can't protect, where maybe Jaxson Dart gets him out of some of those situations.
All right, I'll get to preparing Jaxson in a second. Last question on the decision itself. Do you have a conversation with your veterans and your leadership council or your captains in the locker room before you do this? Because the veterans on the team have been very much behind Russell Wilson. They spoke glowingly about him. They're huge fans of Russ. Is this something you discuss with them? Do you have that conversation? Do you not go that way? And will the players know from watching Jaxson Dart run the scout team in practice, and whether or not, to your point, with Romo imitating Favre, he's slinging around all over the place, are they going to have a pretty good feel for themselves whether or not he's ready to go?
Yeah, the players always know. They usually know first because they're in the locker room. Now, the public support is there, and I'm not saying whether they support him or don't support him. That doesn't matter. But the players know. In my past history, no, that wasn't a situation where you're talking to players, because you get a feel. You can tell how a wide receiver runs a route for one guy, and then how he runs a route for another. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you have your eyes wide open and you're paying attention. So they know. So, the hardest conversation is that one where you're sitting down with both quarterbacks,
right?
And you got to tell one he's not playing. You got to tell the other he is. And, the guy that's being told is getting to play, don't show too much excitement, be cool. And then the guy that, obviously, because there's disappointment, and there'll be great disappointment for Russell Wilson. Nobody likes to be taken out of the game.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know, but Citizens does.
Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
No question about it. All right, so now take me to Tuesday, game planning, getting ready, and then Wednesday when, I'm sure Jaxson was here Tuesday as well, looking at the game plan and getting ready. What does that look like as you now try to get a guy like Jaxson Dart? Now he's had a cup of coffee, a couple series in these games, but for his first ever NFL start, to make sure he's ready. What does that process and week look like for you as an offensive coach?
Well, I think number one, you better be playing to the guy's strengths, because it's a different skill set. It is. So, I mean, it might be less check with me type change of play, audible things. I mean, he'll obviously have to do some of that, and that's not super complicated. But, it would be, all right, what does Jaxson do different that now we have to do our best to utilize? I would hope that it involves paring down, doing less, and some conversations with him. Now, the coaches know what he is capable of, but you want to make sure he's really 100% comfortable with every potential call that's going to come out of your mouth into his ear, because there's going to be enough other chaotic things that happen within a football game that he's going to have to deal with. So I would think simplify, play to his strengths, some conversations with him as the week goes on, at least. I mean, and you do this with every quarterback. Hey, I would always, on Saturday night, what do you love? What do you hate? Also during the week, if you don't like something, let's not play games and pretend you like it because the coaches like it. You got to be straight up and say, hey, listen, I'm not comfortable with this play. So you have those types of conversations early in the week, and at the end of the week, even if you as the coaching staff love a play, you might just cross it off and it's gone because you can tell that he's not real comfortable with those particular plays.
Fantastic answer, Coach. I had about 3 follow-ups. I think you answered all of them in that answer, which is great. When you say pare it down and simplify, do you mean just the sheer volume of plays? I know you talked about Let's maybe check with me and, adjustments at the line. And that 100% I get. But is it just the volume of plays that you're paring down, or are there other ways too that you can try to
Yeah,
simplify this and make it easier for the quarterback?
volume number one. Coaches love security blankets. They want to feel like, do we have enough ammo for this game? And they never feel comfortable enough, so they just keep adding until there's so many plays. You got to remember that not only the quarterback, but every player out there on the field needs to know what to do, and you need to feel comfortable that they're going to do it the way they've been coached to do it. So, yeah, volume is a dangerous thing. I know, in certain situations with a veteran team, a really smart team, you can get away with it. But I learned it from ourselves. We would game plan all Tuesday. He'd come in Tuesday about 6 p.m. after we had worked all day, come up with the plan. We're about ready to laminate the call sheet, and he'd say, too much, cut it down. He goes, I don't want what you like, I want what you love. So I learned at a very early stage in my career that let's run the plays that we love and that our quarterback specifically loves, and that and instead of having all these things we like and maybe we might have to use it, just get good at what you're good at and keep doing it.
Does that reduce the number of personnel packages you can use then too, Coach? And do you get to a point where, you want to make it easier for the quarterback, but you also don't want to limit what you can do against your opponent? So at what point do you kind of figure out what that fine line is where you don't want to cross it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the fun part. When again, I wasn't the head coach. I'm a pass game coordinator with Dallas, but we knew we had to keep it down, or he was going to get mad and come in and do what he did, which was cut it down. But it made us be really creative. You don't want to lose personnel groups. You generally want the best 11 on the field. If that's 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and a back, then that's the way you're a little heavier in some of those situations. If it's 3 receivers, that's for each group to decide. But you get really creative. Maybe there's plays that you love that you don't. You think about out of a 3 receiver set. Well, you turn that into a 2 tight end set if you want. So you get really creative, and I think it makes you really think. And again, the bottom line is, run the plays that you and your players love, and just do it in different ways. But it's, might have the same play out of 3 different personnel groups,
right?
But it's the same play. Now different guys are having to run it, but for the most part, the quarterback's seeing the same play just with different people.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the things that you would feature with Dart? Do you look back to the preseason and what he was successful with? He had such a good preseason. They ran a lot of RPOs with him, a lot of screens, a lot of go balls, a lot of stick routes, which, not surprisingly, Coach, was a lot of the stuff they ran at Ole Miss, right? A lot of those type of college concepts. So is that the type of stuff you lean into when you're trying to figure out, in your opinion, what Jaxson would do best that would allow him to succeed?
Well, I would think, and we saw it in the game last week, in the second of the last series, I think it was a design quarterback draw. I'm not 100% sure, but, you're going to have some plays in there, easy decisions for him. A read option is one of the simplest plays you can ask a quarterback to do. Now, do you want to do it with everybody? No, but I think he's a guy that, whether it's a quarterback draw, RPOs, where you're putting some stress on a quality defensive end or linebacker, so I would think that's going to be mixed in. I think, the screen's great. What he's best at, from a concept standpoint, but the concepts also have to fit against who you're playing, because they're studying the same tape. So, I think you just try to play to his strengths, and obviously his athleticism is one of those. Now, am I saying you want him carrying the ball 15 times in the game and being the leading rusher? No, because he's going to get some yards for you off scrambles and things like that. So I just think it's a like I said, a more limited selection of plays, but ones that every time he hears it come into his ear, it's very critical that he hears that and he's like, yes, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So, that's the what you're navigating during the week.
I always have this inner debate with myself when you have a young quarterback or a backup quarterback coming in. how you utilize the run game, coach, because you want to get them into third and manageable, right? You don't want them in third and longs. You want to run the ball well on early downs. Yet at the same time, I think you give the quarterback the best chance of success by doing things like running play action on early downs, right? Where you want to put the defense into conflict. But then if you throw an incomplete pass, you're in 2nd and 10, and then you're behind the stick. So how would you want to utilize that run pass balance to put the quarterback, a guy like Jaxson, into the best chance to succeed?
Yeah, I don't think it matters which way you go, whether you throw to run or run to throw. I mean, it can happen both ways as long as the key is you got to be able to threaten them with the run. It doesn't mean it has to happen first, but you have to run the football efficiently. I like this Scattaboo. I know everybody's excited about him, but I like him. He's a good piece to have in the mix. I think Tracy's out, I believe, but you got to run the football efficiently. When the defense came to life a little bit last week, so that's a good sign. Because I think the recipe for the Giants in general is, run the football, protect the football, play good defense. It's not going to be games that everybody's all excited about. Dallas, that was a aberration, I believe, just because I don't think Dallas's defense is very good. But
yeah.
That's not the way I think the games will look, at least for a little while. I think they're going to be close, tight games where, you just are the smarter team or better in critical situations. So, you can't have Russell Wilson be your leading rusher, just like the Chiefs can't have Patrick Mahomes being their leading rusher. I mean, that is not a good – I mean, I love that they're doing it, but it's not the way you want to look at the rushing game, at least, I think, to really have a chance to be a successful team. But run the football period efficiently. It doesn't mean just run it more. It just means figure out, just like we talked about with him, what are your best runs? What can you block the best? What can the back run the best? And just get good at it.
John's Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. Coach, a few more for you. You talked about simplifying your game plan, right? When you start breaking down what the opponent's going to do and, you coach them up, well, if they do this, then you go here, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have to simplify that a little bit too, since maybe he hasn't seen as much? How does that change getting him ready for what the opponent's going to show you for a rookie as opposed to, let's say, a veteran like Russell Wilson?
Are you talking about what he's seeing during the week?
Correct. Yeah, and just in terms of how you get him prepared for what the Chargers are going to show him on Sunday, and then how he adjusts to it.
I think you throw the kitchen sink at him in practice. I mean, yeah, you want the plays to look successful, feel successful, because that builds confidence. But you better have them prepared for, because, I think that's the way the Chargers will come into the game. We've got a young quarterback. We're going to throw everything we possibly can at him. So that's a fine line you're walking. But, because sometimes as a coach, you're drawing up the card, what you want the defense to be, and you want the play to look good. So I think it'll be a mixture of giving him some things he's not really ready for, and then also giving him some things where you're hitting a big deep post down the middle for a touchdown, and everybody's cheering on the practice field. So that's why a week in the NFL is something else.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help.
Make sense of your money with Citizens.
Yeah, and Coach, I was looking at that Chargers defense. And look, they do not allow guys to get over the top on them, generally speaking. They're going to keep those two safeties back, and then they're going to play an umbrella over the back end of that defense. Is that something you have to stress with Jaxson? While Brian Daboll does want his quarterbacks to be aggressive and he wants them to throw the ball down the field, that's been a huge focus for them. You have to be a little judicious here in terms of when you take those shots against the defense like the Chargers with the way they play.
Oh, yeah, there are games – like, number one, know where that Derwin James is. I would make sure you know where he is. But, there are games, when you're playing a team like that it refuses to let you get it down the field. You're all week you're talking about, check downs underneath, and then you're stressing to every player on that field. Listen, their way of playing defense is they're assuming you won't be patient, number one. You won't nickel and dime it down the field. and number two, that they'll eventually force a turnover after, on a runner that catches the ball or runs it. So, you're stressing to everybody, you got to protect the football at all costs, because we're going to have some 8, 9, 10 play drives potentially.
And that comes back to running the football, right? If teams are going to play those two safeties deep, you got to run it.
You have to. I mean, you have to. Yeah, and you have to keep running it. You really do. So, like I said, the Scatterboo looks like he's built for a guy that can carry it, 20, 25 times. That's a good combination right there. And he's going to beat the defense up. And as we always hear, 3 yards in the first quarter is 4 yards in the second. And then it becomes 5. Then all of a sudden you pop one for 25, and and that's how you get good.
And do you try to draw up some easy design plays to get the Dart neighbors connection going early in this game? So Malik, coming off a rough week, starts feeling good early, and they kind of build a little bit of a rhythm earlier in the game.
Yeah, this has been another topic that I do have an opinion on, and having been a receivers coach, been around some great receivers through my coaching career. I think you have to do that. You have to, every play design. Now it's not every play pass, but most of them better feature your big dog first. Doesn't mean he's getting it, but at least have the play start that way, that he's first in line to potentially get a target or a touch. And then you have some specialty plays where he's guaranteed a touch. Whether it's a screen, whatever it is that I don't care if you line him up in the backfield and throw him a swing pass, with somebody blocking on the edge, but I always had a box on my call sheet. When I was in Pittsburgh, it was AB. When I was in Kansas City, it was Dwayne Bowe or Jamal Charles. When I was in Arizona, it was Larry Fitzgerald, where I had a little box for them that were kind of guaranteed touches. I could I made sure I got some of those plays called early, because these guys are different creatures. I mean, these big time receivers, they want to be involved, and the more involved they are, the more into the game they are, and you don't lose track of them. So, yeah, I think you got to feature them in most every, in Dallas, we had Jason Witten. So the tight end coach, Tony Sperano, the late Tony Sperano at that time, he'd be in the game plan room. Hey, we got to get something to Witten. We got to get something to Witten. And you're doing the same thing for your better players. Those are the guys you want having the opportunity to touch the ball the most, especially in third downs and critical situations.
In terms of managing the rookie quarterback during the game, and this might not be a head coach thing, but obviously there's lots of up and downs. It's the first game starting. It could be a little emotional. How much is that kind of managing that based on the personality of the quarterback? Now, one guy's Daniel Jones is going to be different than Baker Mayfield, right? It was going to be different than Tony Romo, who's going to be different than Jaxson Dart. So how do you try to keep the guy level and maybe not get a little too fired up? I imagine that was the problem with Baker. He probably went into that game with his hair on fire, wanting to make a million throws. I think Jackson will probably be the same way. How do you try to manage that part of it with the rookie not being maybe a little bit too juiced up or overwhelmed in his first start?
Yeah, I don't know Jackson other than what I've seen. I mean, it's all personality based. I had Matt Castle in Kansas City, and I take flack for some of these things, but he was good. He was a good quarterback, but not a upper half of the league type quarterback. But I figured out that when he was pissed off, he played better, and so I spent most of my time just trying to tick him off, and he'd be pissed at me, and we'd be yelling back and forth. But he played better. Where other guys, like you said, Baker, you had to just you had to put the little choke leash on him and try to, hey, calm down. So yeah, it's all personality driven. It looks like Jackson has good energy. I don't think, he's going to be a guy you're going to have to fire up a whole bunch. So then with him, it would probably be just stay calm. There's bad things are going to happen. It's just, move on to the next play.
As you try to get Matt Castle mad, all I can think of is Woody Harrelson getting Wesley Snipes mad and White Man Can't Jump as he thinks he plays better. That's great. So this is my last one for you. And it's a little, existential. So please bear with me. As a coach, you think what your quarterback's going to look like and what he's going to do. You put this game plan together, you work with him all week, and I think you probably have a good feel for what that's going to look like. But in your experience, do you really, or is the coach really sitting there thinking, kind of like the rest of us, like, I wonder what this is going to look like once we actually get into this thing and he's under center and he's leading the 11 guys on offense?
Yeah, you never know. You really don't. And I don't care, if it's Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, you know kind of what you're going to get, but you just, we had a 2-game stretch with him where he threw 12 touchdowns. Did I know that was coming? No, I had no idea that was coming. But, when they're on, they're on. When they're off, it's about trying to get them back on as quickly as you can.
Coach, awesome stuff. You can find Coach Haley on SiriusXM. He hosts with Bob Papa. He's on with Solomon Wilcots as well. Make sure you go find it. Check it out on SiriusXM. Coach, thank you so much for the time. Let's talk soon and enjoy the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Tell Papa I said hello.
I will. That's all the time we have for the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. We will see you next time, everybody.